So I'd like to welcome you to this session on creating high quality environments for babies or infants. Do you guys have infants in care at the moment?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. So first I'd like to do an acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional land as the land that I'm on tonight, which is the Awabakal people. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and those amazing elders that are emerging in our care. Would you like to share the land that you're on tonight? Paula, do you know the land you're on?
Wurundjeri.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. Yeah.
They're on Gumbaynggirr country.
We've got two Joannes tonight.
Yeah, I don't know the land I'm on.
Yep, we can work on that, Amber.
Yes.
Yes. That's on my point. You will email me about that.
Yep.
Excellent. What about Jackie?
Yeah, Gundichi Mara.
Yeah, there's some tongue twisters. Yeah. Julie?
Ngunnawal.
Yep. Mary? Oh, maybe Mary, are you eating?
Can you see me? Or
No, I can't see you. I can see the top of your head, so we can't see you eating. But do you know what land you're on at the moment?
where the camera is on this thing. Wait a minute. Oh, maybe I've got to do it. I've just bought a
That's
new.
perfect.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
So does that mean you're going to watch me eat my dinner?
No, we won't. We're going to be too busy looking at the slides.
Good.
What land are you on, Mary?
Oh, it's spelled quite unusual. I don't know if I can pronounce it, but I think it's Y-U-I-B. It's like Berry or something.
Okay, yep.
Berry.
And what about the other Joe that's up there?
The Wonnarua people.
Oh, Wonnarua, yes. Yep. Okay, so let me see how we're gonna. So why are you guys here tonight? Like, why was this session one that you were interested in?
Well,
I just like to do as much learning as I can. So just to do something a bit different is always a bonus. And if I can't use it right now because I don't have a lot of little babies, I can always use it in the future. So.
Yep. Awesome.
good answer.
I've got a very busy 1-year-old at the moment who's keeping me on my toes, and I'm really wanting to find some more ways that I can really engage him in my environment and really just come up with some more ideas so that I can plan better for him and just be inspired. That's why I'm here.
Awesome.
I'm lending my child a Cert 3 in a traineeship, and my boss thought it'd be a good idea, and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. And actually, Emma, my 18-year-old son is just about to finish his Cert 3 as a trainee in our childcare service, and the content,
right?
Not inspiring. You know, I'm trying to help him, and I think that's like, you would think that we would give Cert 3s really inspiring stuff to want them to stay there and really love it, and it's just all the really just boring, basic, and even he's just in his baby prac, and you can just see he's just, and I'm like, but babies, it's the most important, amazing time. It's like, we always thought the first 8 years were the most important. The first 3 are. Like, those first 3 years are so important. It's like, how can you not be passionate about it? And it's like, well, when they're not given that information, and I think that's something that we really need to advocate for from an RTO perspective, is that the information around infant toddler practice needs to be better. It needs to be more in depth and more up to date, I think, too. Yeah.
Yep.
Yay. Yeah. Paula, what about you?
I like to learn. I like to connect with others and see how they are doing. We can exchange ideas and learn from each other. So great opportunity. Thank you. In the comfort of my own home. So
I know. I hope someone's got a wine or something. Or maybe a hot chocolate.
Lots of water for me here.
Joe, what about you?
I'm new to Inspired, and I'm really interested
Welcome.
in natural resources.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to this hopefully helping me create my environment a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Julie?
For a number of reasons. I've got a lot of little people going off to big school next year, and so we'll start from scratch with babies. But I've also just had a little 17-week-old just start in the last few weeks. So as much as she likes watching the other kids, it'd be nice to plan with her in mind as well.
Yep. Yeah, beautiful. 17 weeks. That's such so
weeks.
Little, isn't it?
So little.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I'm so passionate about so in Inspired EC we tend to go through waves of things. So you know, when we first started Inspired EC, Nicole and I, a big focus was on nature-based play and risky play and things like that, and that evolved through our interactions with Claire Warden, and as our journey's gone on, you know, then education leadership became a big thing, especially for me, and we've sort of gone off on our own things. But last year I spent some time with Penny Brownlee in New Zealand, and I did an infant toddler intensive, and it was like 12 hours a day for 5 days in like a full-on yoga retreat place that was freezing. Like I used to go, I would go to the toilet wrapped in a blanket, like, because it was like camp-like facilities. But it was life-changing. It really, you can't unsee some of the stuff that you see, and you can't unknow some of the things that you know, and to understand how vitally important these years are for children, and especially when they're in our care, how much responsibility we have. And it's about just knowing more and more and more. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of stuff, and if you want to know more about some of the things, make sure you email me after. But we're going to focus mainly on the environment tonight. I'm going to do another session about the role of the adult with infants. Hopefully, it's probably not going to be for 2 weeks, but it's just, again, like I was saying with the Cert 3 training, we just don't know what you don't know. And I think that now that I have that knowledge, I have a responsibility to get that out as much as possible. So so that's great to know. I'm just going to flick my jumper on. It's just dropped like 10 degrees here in Newcastle, like in 2 seconds. So I'm just going to quickly flick in and out. Why is that? Okay, so one of the things is about how early experiences affect the development of the. Sorry, I've just got to move my screen because it's covered. Okay, so early experiences affect the development of brain architecture, which provides a foundation for all future learning, behaviour and health. Just as a weak foundation compromises the quality and strength of a house, adverse experiences early in life can impair brain architecture, with negative effects lasting all into adulthood. And I know we know this already in early childhood. Like we've always known that those first 5 to 8 years are the most important and the most formative for a child's brain and for emotional intelligence, all that sort of thing. But I don't think we're quite. What's your thoughts on how much knowledge we have around the importance of those first 2 or those first 1,000 days? Has anyone explored any of that yet, or have anything they'd like to share about those first 1,000 days, which is up to about 2.5?
Yeah, it's really, really, really important. It's the real building blocks of, it's that wiring, the process of wiring up that brain really commences from birth, really. And the more positive experiences, like great environments, every positive experience is another wire in that brain.
Yep.
And the more dense that wiring in that brain is, the better the child is prepared for school. We need to wire that brain up so that when they are school age, they're ready to go, because after about 5 or 6, no more wiring. No more wires go up in that brain. I don't know the actual term.
Yeah, like the pruning off of all those synapses and the pathways that aren't used. Yeah.
And a lot of, and this is where the government in Australia have got it all wrong. They need to spend all the money in the first 5 years of a child's life, not once they start going to school. It's all too late, it's all over, and all you've got left is, you can just enhance what wiring there is. So it's really important for us to get it right. And every positive experience is, you're thinking, well, there's another little wire in the brain. So that's really important to me. I love the neuroscience of the early development of a developing brain. That's
Mary, have you heard of Nathan Wallace?
no, but I may have, but I don't remember all these names.
Yep, I will. His name will come up on a slide soon. But he is one of the leading neuroscience researchers. He was head of an organisation where all international, like the police, anyone to do with medicine, they go to him for research, or that organisation for research, and he's phenomenal.
He sounds great.
Yeah, really good.
I wish I could rattle off the name of another really brilliant neuroscientist that I went to a workshop here in Mackay, and it really impacted me. You got no idea, because it made me realise about my own daughter, who would have been at uni or going to uni at that point. And what he passed on, his knowledge was critical, and it actually saved my daughter and I think, his knowledge, and that's all about those receptors turning off.
Well, that'd be great if we could get that, if you want to share that name once you call it.
It's all about love and support, and that love and support has to be right from the word go. Love and support.
Maybe it could be someone who I'm going to share tonight, maybe, possibly, actually. Yeah. So what I want you to so actually after this, so what do you think this image is?
Well, I bet you that's all about the brain.
Yeah, the synapses being formed in the brain, or the connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So that first panel on the left, I always say this would be the most amazing artwork in a house.
Yeah.
But that the panel to the left, what age child do you think that child is?
That'd be, well, it depends, because some children can look like that on the left if they've had no love and support and no nurturing and no opportunity to learn. You know, they could be 5 or 6 and look like that. Or they can be born like that, and then by the time you get to the end one, after a couple of years, they might be all wired up nice and densely. So it just depends on how many positive experiences a child has as to what slide that will relate to.
Definitely.
Really.
So we've got a newborn. So this is like a general sort of things. A newborn. The next panel's 1 month. The next panel 9 months. Anyone want to guess what the fourth panel is?
2 years.
What was that, sorry?
12 months.
12 months, Julie?
2 years.
2 years? Oh, we're going to have to give the prize to Julie. What about the fifth one?
Is that once I go to school? I don't know. Because sometimes some of the wires drop out. So
so that last panel is actually as an adult, and what you can see that's happened there is it's called, like Joanne Mills mentioned, about the pairing back of the synapses. And the reason that happens is because when they're not used anymore. The brain's a very resilient thing. It's very sustainable, knows how to sustain itself. So what it does is it uses its energy where it's mostly used. So those, as you can see, those synapses, some of them are quite stronger and thicker than the previous panel, and it's because those things have happened over and over and over again.
Right.
So it's the more we, when they say if you don't use it you lose it, that's exactly a perfect example of the brain's connections and synapses pairing and development. And also, interestingly enough, the deeper those synapses, the thicker those synapses are, the more likely that brain is going to go down that path when it is in that sort of situation. So that's where our habits come into place. So those synapses are very like a metaphor for habits, because the thicker those are, the harder they are to change, as well as anyone who's tried to change any habits that they didn't like would.
Right. Well, that's
really interesting, but you can do it. It's like that cow going down the desire path to the, when you look at paddocks, there's always that same way the cow will go, and it's that track, and the grass is thick on the side of it, and it gets deeper and deeper, and it's harder and harder for the cow to actually jump out of that track and make a different track, because it's actually knee deep now. And that's what synapses are like. It's the brain has that habit and that pattern that it usually does, and to get out of that pattern is actually quite tricky.
Wow, that's really interesting.
So how do babies play? Tell me.
Well, they use their mouth a lot because that's an important receptor.
Senses, definitely.
They watch, they observe, they immerse themselves in.
Yeah. On that point, how many senses do we have?
6.
More? We have 7 senses, and maybe we do have 8. The 8th is still being officiated, but so we have our general 5, and then we also have vestibular and proprioceptive. So if you want some more information on those, I'll touch on them tonight. But they're definitely, if you haven't got Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom, that's a book that we've got. You guys get 10% off too, I think. So Balanced and Barefoot is the best book. If I ever have to tell, even conferences anywhere, if anyone says what book do I buy, Balanced and Barefoot is the book every person who even comes into contact with children should have. I've been advocating it to get it in the baby bag that we get in New South Wales when you have a baby. It should be in that. Every person should have Balanced and Barefoot. That's just it. That's basic Timbernook. So the Timbernook that we run, that Inspired EC run, Angela Hanscom's the founder of Timbernook. She's a pediatric occupational therapist, and she designed the Timbernook program. So, yeah, if you haven't read Balanced and Barefoot, your mentor should be able to get you a copy to borrow if you don't want to purchase it. But definitely highly recommend it.
Will that be in the notes, or?
Yep. I'll make sure it is.
You email notes after these sessions?
Yep. I'll give you access to some notes.
Saves writing while you're eating.
Yeah, actually, Angela we've just on our online platform, we've just released a webinar with her, so you guys will have access to that.
Okay.
Yep. So Angela's just one of the most amazing, inspiring people I've ever met in my whole life. So highly recommend listening to her. So definitely sensorial. It's all about exploring with the senses. So tell me what your environment looks like now, currently looks like, for babies in particular.
I've got a lot of posting sort of activities at the moment, because I've got a little one who just loves to just poke his little fingers in places and shove things into other things. And I've got a formula tin at the moment with a tiny little slit at the top and a whole heap of paddle pop sticks, and he just loves sitting there trying to force these paddle pop sticks through that hole. And he made one go through, and it made a big ting noise the other day, and he was like, oh
yes.
That I've got like a kind of like a timber box full of holes, and I fill it with all different kinds of things, and he loves to come along and pull them out. Like I've got scarves and silks and anything that he can pick up and pull out and move, and he's really loving at the moment. So
that's beautiful. Would anyone else like to share what they currently have out for their infants in their space?
Well, I don't have any infants at the moment, but when I did, one thing that was really popular with one of them, at least anyway, all of them, I have a lot of empty boxes, lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
And what they'd love to do is, from one box, I'd have like all the blocks and all the animals and, you know, lots of different resources, and they would just love to just sit there and just take each and every one of those out of one box and pack them into the next box.
Yeah.
And they'd just spend ages just doing that, just going from one box and putting it in another box and then into another box, and then, yeah, they just enjoyed, you know, I don't know,
We'll actually talk about that. That is a thing, Mary. So we'll actually touch on that later on.
Okay.
Very important thing. Yeah. Would anyone else like to share even some of their favourite things that they might have in their environment? Yep. Jackie?
Yes. Lots of sensory stuff, just Play-Doh, painting, just, you know, feathers with painting or leaves with painting, just to mix up the different things. But I mean, at a younger age, they're more likely just to use their hands and that anyway. And then just sand, water, all that sort of things they really love. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Would anyone else say, Julie, with your little coming in, what's your...
I haven't done very much with the little one, but with the two that almost two, I have my very lovely husband put a not a full-length mirror on the wall, but like a half-length mirror on the wall so that they can see themselves in it. So the first time that, you know, they see themselves in the mirror is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually interesting. Dr. Emmy Pickler from the Pickler approach, where she actually did some interesting research around mirror work with really young infants. So if you email me, I can send you some information on that.
Yes,
yeah,
please.
Yeah, so it is important to, when we're looking at our environments for infants, is really coming from, because what I find a lot in my consultancy work is that when I go into spaces, the infant and toddler spaces are more like simplified preschool spaces, if that makes sense. Like it'll just be, it's like we go from that, what the preschool room looks like, and then we make it more simple or more basic for the babies, when it should be the completely opposite way around. We should be looking at where they are at and building on that to get to that preschool sort of style of environment. So using our knowledge of child development to provide appropriate environments is key. And again, I think that's one of the biggest gaps that we have in Australia from an early childhood perspective. You have to actually go and do training that's not RTO, not our basic training, to get that stuff, because it's not there, as Amber can attest to. Yeah. So I'm going to share. First, we're going to talk about, what do you think the most important resource you can have in your environment?
You, as an educator.
Yay! Excellent. Yes, it is. So us, and that was one of the most key elements. Nicole and I wrote some articles for this ECTA conference, and one of the ones that was most important and most reflective, I spent half of my week at that course that I did with Penny crying just because I realized how much I got it wrong. And you don't have to 100% get it right, we get it as right as we can, as we hope to, but I just thought, gosh, I wish I could have all that time over again. I felt so much pressure to have every cause and effect tool, every toy, every baby Einstein video, everything that I thought I needed to have. And all they need is you. All they need is a person who responds to them. That's it. That's the most powerful resource that you have in your space, is the fact that you are there and you respond to them. You make eye contact. That is it. It's free. It's not messy. You don't have to pack it away. You don't have to wash it. You don't have to do any of that stuff. And I wish I knew that 19 years ago. Now, when I had my first son, all I was too busy about was being perfect for my ex-mother-in-law at the time and having the house nice and tidy, when all I really needed to do was not have any of that garbage and just be with my baby. And when we talk about especially like, Jackie, you've got a 17-week-old coming into care. Being able to know that that's the most important part is just being there. You don't have to have every spectacular environment. You don't have to have all these resources. The best resource is you. And I think that's really empowering. And I think it's something we can definitely share with families and to really help them to understand that that's all they need. They just need someone who responds to them. That's the best brain building tool that we can actually give babies. And I think it's so underestimated, and I don't think it's reinforced enough, especially to young mums and young dads. Yes, sorry, Jackie.
Yeah, especially that really close contact, because if you observe babies, as we all do, they're very intent. They watch your mouth, they watch where your tongue is, they watch where your teeth are. Their little brain is calculating all of this stuff and storing it in there, so that later when they start developing language, that's all that stuff is stored in their brain. And they watch our expressions, and this is how they learn the connotations of, the lilt of our language of different languages. They're very intensely studying us all the time. It's so important that eye contact with them, that close contact is imperative.
It's actually everything. That eye contact and the eye responsiveness is everything.
Absolutely everything.
Jackie, what were you? I think Jackie, you had something you were going to share.
I did Circle of Security last year, and that was truly amazing.
Yes, highly recommend that training to anyone who has access to it. I'm going to try and get hold of it for us as a team.
What was that? Sorry, I couldn't hear. Please.
The Circle of Security.
Thank you.
Yep. Sorry, Jackie.
That's all about the hands and being there for the child, but not necessarily always picking them up and that sort of thing. Just being there for them to come back to you when they need you. So just being that that support person if they needed it, and if they don't, just stepping back and letting them have their own environment and their own a way to do things. And then when they do want your support or they want to cuddle or something like that, they've got you there to come back to.
Yeah. Penny talks a lot about the fourth trimester, for that next 9 months that the baby is outside of the womb, and how it's just as important. I can't go. I'm hoping to get Penny over, or to actually develop a course for us to be able to access, because not everyone can go to New Zealand for a week, and it's only 1 out of 3 weeks that she does, which I was meant to be back in September, which who knows, but. I'm hoping to help her to get her to develop something with us that is more accessible, because that was, there was so much of that. But those first 9 months of just that being in the known and then going to the unknown and then being able to come back because the known's always there is so important. Yeah. So here's Sue Gerhardt. This might have been someone you're talking about, Mary. This Sue Gerhardt. This is another book that we stock. Why Love Matters. It's all the brain stuff. All the brain stuff about how love actually helps build a brain. Interactions actually do help build a brain structure. The more positive and cooperative the early experiences a child has in those early relationships, the more it helps to build the orbitofrontal and the prefrontal cortex to develop. And we've got 4 brains, and that last brain, the one that makes us human, is the one that we need to be helping to develop, and it develops through these relationships. And it's, when you look at Nathan Wallace's work around brain scans, of like violent criminals and stuff, we have a fight or flight brain, and we also have this, our human brain. And the fight or flight brain is the one that if it develops too much, because our brain only has certain capacities. So if that brain develops too much, the other brain that makes us empathetic and resilient, that one doesn't develop as much. So when you look at some brain scans of like really violent criminals, their fight or flight brain is hugely developed compared to the empathetic brain. So and that happens through. So when a child's brain is in fight or flight, that empathetic brain can't develop. It's like this. It's like a seesaw. So it's really important that a child feels that security, and that's why that security and that attachment is so important, because they feel safe, which means they can develop the parts of the brain that they really need to be the humans that we need in our world. So one part of the prefrontal cortex that's particularly important in social interaction is called the orbitofrontal cortex, and it really built up through positive social interactions, and that feel good, like just feeling good and feeling safe and having a good sense of well-being builds that brain. And again, so that comes back, it's so simple. It's so simple. All it is about relationships and being there for a bubba when they need you. Does anyone want to ask anything about that? Sorry, I get a bit passionate about it.
I don't blame you, because I do too. What you're talking about there actually carries on right through into their teenagehood, which when I went and did that workshop was a real eye-opener for me.
Maybe it was Nathan. I don't know. Nathan, like I did. What's that? Sorry.
He has three adult children, all males, and he actually used analogies with his 3 children, which was quite relatable.
Okay, I'll do a bit of research and see what I can find.
Yeah.
Gillian actually might be able to enlighten me too. So she probably.
I do have his name because I've got the notes. Yeah. I've got the certificate, so his name's on that certificate, so I can go back through my certificates and you know, of attendance and stuff and have a look.
That sounds great.
Yeah, but he was saying that like when they're a teenager, for an example, so this carries right through from babyhood, right through these receptor things or whatever they're called. If they're going through some sort of I don't know, life thing where sometimes the parents have these high expectations of their kiddies, and the kiddies are decide, you know, the teenagers deciding that that's not really the course for them, and if they're not getting that love and support, then what happens is that, you know, in lots of areas, this happens in lots of areas, if they're not getting certain love and support, these things actually switch off forever. They switch off forever. And what shocked me sitting there with all these people was, he said, once they're switched off, they can't be switched on again. And it all has to do with longevity. Mm. And he was saying it makes a difference between somebody having a long life and a short life.
Yeah, it's tragic, isn't it?
And that really, that just hit me like a brick. And then I actually had a situation with my daughter where she was struggling at uni with a course she didn't feel that was for her and wanted to do something totally different. And I just remembered, you know, love and support, love and support. Oh, you know, really should finish a degree, but hang on a minute. Just have to support her through this. And I remembered the analogy he used on his own 3 kids, all 3 different types of children. And the one that was like least successful in the beginning, love and support, and now he's sort of like a professor or something.
Yeah. We all need love and support.
In his late 30s, 40s or something, you know, but this is all about love and support.
Yes, exactly.
And I supported her through that, and she ended up being the top 12 applicant for the Qantas Group pilot program in Toowoomba. Had a 22,000 application. Awesome.
Well done.
So I supported her drop that degree and just go for it. And she did. She was doing architecture at the time. So
yeah, so definitely, and that's the thing. So basically, Sue Gerhardt's work, it can be a bit of a hard read, that book. Like you want to read a bit and then have a break and read a bit because it's very academic. But you know, basically, it comes down to a baby needs to feel loved to learn, and all that stuff impacts intellectual potential, language development, regulation of feeling, self-control, development of empathy, trust and motivation, acquisition of conscience, identity, self-confidence and self-esteem, you know, just resilience, and the ability to make and sustain future relationships. So it's just giving those babies that you have, those cuddles and that love in your space is everything. And that's so important. Through relationships, babies learn about themselves and they learn that they're valuable human beings. And this is one of the things that I really struggle with when I do on consults, or if I have people come into training, when they talk about, you know, probably 90% of services or stories that I hear, there's always someone who says, you know, they've just got to get used to it. I don't have 4 arms. I don't, you know, I can't be everywhere all the time. And that's where it's not good enough. It takes a village to raise a child, and that's where in childcare services, and I mean, I know you guys are family daycare, but in childcare services, it's every adult should be on hand. If there's a baby crying, whether you're the cook, the cleaner, the admin, the director, whatever, you come and help the people in that baby space. And that's why, you know, obviously in family daycare, you also don't want to have 4 babies, because you need to have that balance so you can actually be there when they need you. So, you know, we need to make time to get to know each baby and watch them, listen to them, engage with them, but we also need to give them time to get to know you. Especially when you look at introverted and extroverted people and children, you know, introverts need time and space to watch you. Extroverts will pretty much take it from you. As they do, you know, an extroverted child will tell you what they want when they want it usually, but you know, you've also got to be aware of the introverted child that's in your space as well, and know that they need time just to watch you and listen to you. That's actually on the bottom left hand side. That's my youngest child, Oscar, when he was like a bobber. He's 9 now, and I always look at that photo and he's such a watcher and just wanted to, you know, get to know and to build relationships, and so amazing. So I'm going to just share with you a couple of my favorite theorists when it comes to infants in particular. Bowlby, like that attachment theory. So, you know, the most important principle of attachment theory is that an infant needs at least to develop a relationship with at least one primary caregiver. That's why, I mean, family daycare is so great. you know, where we have that opportunity. There's not people on rotating rosters and things like that. But even I know in my work in the service that Nick and I were at for a long time, a lot of the time we do rostering and things like that, and it would actually be all about the adults. You know, it wasn't fair that some people were always on early shifts, so they'd rotate it, or it wasn't fair that who's worked in a service here, like actually in childcare services? Anyone? Yep. So you'd know about rostering and how it tends to be more from an adult focus, not actually the child's focus. And in a baby, you know, when we're looking at building that, the most important thing is to have at least a relationship with one primary caregiver. Why is it more important for the adults to have fairness when it comes to their roster over the development of that relationship and that child knowing that they're going to have that person that they can connect with, that they're familiar with? I've even had fellow educators saying that, so say if a child had a particular attachment to me and they didn't attach so well with another person, that person saying, well, they've just got to get used to it. You're not always going to be here. It's like, well, as long as I am here, I'm going to be there. You know, okay, yeah, I can't be here all the time, but I'm going to be here as much as I possibly can, because that's what's most important. It's not about adult egos. It needs to be about what's best for the children. So Bowlby's great. Bandura with that social learning theory. If anyone searches up this video clip, it's actually this baby watching Beyonce's put a ring on it. Is it that song? Put a ring on it? Yeah, and this baby's like already got the moves. You know, they're in a nappy and they've watched it probably half a dozen times, and they can. And I think that's where us as that adult in the space, our role modeling, you know, really just the way we engage with other people, the way we engage with the other children, the way we are when a child has a smelly nappy, you know, all those sort of things, they soak in everything. Like Mary said before, they just watch every single thing that you do. And if you want a child to grow up to be a loving, empathetic, nurturing person, we have to role model that as much as we possibly can. I know, you know, there's been consults and stuff that I've gone through, and I've gone into a space and it was like wading through cheese. I could just feel the vibe between the other adults in the space. And I'm like, gosh, if I can feel that and don't even have a relationship with you, imagine these children that are so highly sensorial. Imagine what they're feeling when they come into a space. So it's just being really aware of yourself and how you're feeling, and taking that time to make sure that your well-being is optimal as possible, you know, looking after yourself so that you've got to fill your cup so that you can fill everyone else's. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
No, that makes sense.
Yep, excellent. Okay. Oh, okay, so here's a perfect, so there's my Oscar again when he was like 2. And this is a perfect example of Bandura's theory. So Oscar's nan on his dad's side lives a couple of hours away from us, and we at this stage we'd probably see her every couple of months, and she'd been down and for about it was about half an hour into it, and next thing I've come through and Oscar's come through and he's got this little trucky singlet on, and his belly was like full of tissues. He had all these tissues. I thought, oh, look at him, he's pretending to have a baby, you know, like I thought, oh, isn't that sweet? Anyway, next thing he's pulled it out, wiped his nose and put it back down there.
Thanks,
and I'm like, what is he doing? And I've turned around and looked at his nan, and here she is pulling the tissue out, wiping her nose and putting it back down there too. And it just reinforced so much how a child can pick up something so quickly and so simply and adopt it, like within like this small period of time he'd picked up that little habit that she was doing. And I think it's just something to reinforce with us as adults when we're in a setting with children, in that environment with children, is how important what we do is important. And I mean, for you guys in your homes and things, it's even more, because it's such a home-like environment, it's even going to be more relatable, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So definitely, if you want to look more information around that, like the role of the educator or the adult in the space, look up that first 1,000 days. We are looking at developing some resources with a colleague, Jackie, at the moment around it. It's just we've had to prioritise other projects at the moment. And also Nathan Wallace, seriously, oh, that man is insanely amazing. So definitely look up Nathan, but I'll put his details in the notes as well.
Oh, great. It's not the same chap that I saw though.
No, okay. So it wasn't Steve. Actually, I've got a book over there, I think, that I'm reading at the moment. Steve Bidler.
Oh, geez, I should have.
A lot of work around boys in particular, and he's Australian. Anyway, you might find it when you find your notes. We'll share it, and I'll share it with everyone else.
Yeah, that'll be.
So
I could. Just actually, I might just have it here somewhere. While you were still doing that, I'll have a rifle through.
So I think we talked a bit about favourite resources before. Can anyone else think of any of the favourite resources that you have, or you might have, or have used with babies?
My veggie garden. They love being out in my veggie garden. Just touching and smelling and yeah.
It's actually interesting. When I went to Teacher Tom's childcare service over in Seattle, I took a study tour over there, and he has these exploratory veggie gardens, and then he's got like a greenhouse where they go and work and do the stuff that actually comes to fruition, because we know when you got your exploratory ones, they don't always
yeah, I've got a strawberry patch that between the children picking the strawberry flowers because they're lovely flowers and them eating some of the strawberries or stepping on the strawberries, there's not a lot that actually makes it to their mouths.
Yeah, and I think that I love that concept about what Teacher Tom did, how he had that working garden, and that would feed all the bits and pieces to the exploratory gardens that the children really actually were allowed just to pull out and explore what was under the dirt and things like that. I just think it's a nice approach to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else have a favourite resource?
I got the name of that fellow.
You've got the name of the fellow?
Yeah, it's quite an unusual spelling. It's Peter, but Pieter.
Yeah.
And his last name is, I don't know how you pronounce it, Rousseau.
Rousseau. Yep.
SSOUW.
Yep.
Yeah, neuroscience and education.
I might get you to email that to me later if you can, Mary, if that's okay.
Yep. Yeah, so it was about the young brain, the parent performance and wellness guidelines from neuroscience, and it was 90 minutes, but it actually went a lot longer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have any of their favourite resources that they have used with babies before?
Just blocks.
Yes. Blocks are just amazing. And that's why blocks, when I do my loose parts training, we talk about how blocks and sandpits are the first loose parts that are in your spaces, but we don't ever realise why we always have them there. They're always there, but we don't talk about why they're always there. But it's because of the original loose part. They can be used in any way, by any age, in any way that needs to be used, if we allow it. Yep. Anyone else want to share their favourite?
I like just being outside with them.
Nature.
Yes.
Yep. Again, in that book, there's a chapter on babies in Balanced and Barefoot that Angela talks about, and just how, oh my gosh, how being outside, just having a baby on a rug outside helps develop their eyesight, how it helps develop their sense of hearing through the sounds. Like a baby outside develops so much more from a sensory perspective and just everything perspective than they do inside. Just putting them on the rug outside, because the richness of the sound outside and the variances in the light, the feeling of the touch on the skin, like the changes in the air temperature and it's amazing. So being outside in nature is the best thing we can be doing for it. But I think a lot of people feel challenged, especially with babies. I know when I design outdoor spaces, especially for childcare services, I'll make sure that we create a space where babies can be on the ground without the risk of every other child trampling over them, because that can be it's stressful as an adult. You feel like a panther. You're like there waiting because you don't want to be holding the baby all the time, because you want them to be able to move in a free way, but we also want to keep them safe, especially when you've got toddlers and 5-year-olds on bikes or whatever. So in a great cheap strategy for that is hay bales, to create just a boundary that you can step over quickly, even if you want to wrap them in sheets or something so they're not so spiky or whatever. But that's a strategy that we've used, just a cheap strategy, is to create like a non-mobile baby space, and the toddlers and that can get over, but it gives you time as an adult to be able to get there too, like, because hay bales aren't the easiest to get over when you're only 3. So yeah, it's about making it easy for you to get babies outside in a way that's also not going to be stressful for you, because that's another thing. As an adult, you don't want to be stressed, because we know babies, everyone feels you. If you're stressed, everyone feels it. You know, a baby in particular is going to feel it if you're stressed. So being gentle with yourself and making it work for both of you, I guess. Okay. So stages of play with objects, and this is again when I talked about how a lot of infant spaces are just sort of simplified preschool spaces. We need to look at the stage of play so we can build on that for babies. So, you know, so up to 10 months, a baby's actually looking at what an object is like. So what is it? What is it? And the way babies do it is with their senses, especially those first 5, but also with the other 2. Right now, I'd probably do a bit of an experience with you, but I'm not going to do it to you tonight. So basically, I usually tell people to pick up an object, just random one, and then explore it with all their senses. And usually the last one is with your mouth.
Yeah.
And that isn't always. And so what it's important to think about is think about your space and what is in that space for me to be able to explore it with all those, you know, how rich can I make my environment for all those senses? You know, is there translucency? Is there taste? Is there a variance of smells? And also those things don't all have to be nice. It's nice to have some abrasiveness. It's nice to have some spikiness. It's nice to have bitterness and things that don't smell the best, you know, like sometimes I think with babies, we try to make everything all nice and gooey and smooth and lovely. But, you know, we need to learn all the stuff, you know, and especially when it comes to early literacy, you know, you want bitterness, you want spike. Whenever I put in a playground, I always have a spiky plant in there. Obviously not something that's going to make you sleep for 100 years or something, but, you know, but it's like just a plant that actually allows children to go, oh, that's what spiky feels like. Like that's really important. So then the next 10 to 20 months, what can I do with these objects? So that's where we'll talk a bit about schema. And then after, it's only really from around 2 years onwards that children actually start to go, what can this object become? So what this abstractness style of thing. And that's where that, because I see lots of home corners in baby spaces. And I say to people, just don't, it's fine to have them, but don't have the pressure that they have to be used for making tea parties and things like that. What they're going to be used for when you're in those first couple of years is banging and shutting and jamming as much stuff in there as I possibly can and moving all that stuff over here, because that's what's important and that's what stage of play. And that's where we need to think about is the stage of play that child's at, so that you know how they're going to use the materials that are in your space and the resources. That's where Piaget comes into it, and he talks about that sensory motor stage. And how about, you know, they're looking, sucking, grasping, listening. It's all about the senses. And remembering, and that's, I think, when we're in early childhood for a long time, I still remember the day that someone gave me a sandpit birthday cake, and I was like, oh, yay, another one. You know, and it's like we actually have to remember that could be that child's first sandpit birthday cake ever. We have to keep that sense of awe and wonder while we're in this role. Like we've got to make sure we don't lose that sense of awe and wonder, because for each child that comes through, it's going to be the first time they've experienced something, the first time they've done any of that sort of stuff, and we have to have the enthusiasm that they're going to be feeling. So heuristic play comes from the Greek word eurisko. Unless anyone in here is Greek, you're going to probably tell me that's not how you say it. But I can't roll my R's very good. So, but basically it means to I find or I discover, and it's about, it's a type of scientific inquiry.
I've been doing this with my little guy.
Oh, yay!
Little treasure basket for
Yes,
him.
treasure baskets are the best. Yes, they're the best.
Oh, I love it. He loves it.
Yeah, and you know what, baby? I've seen babies be immersed in treasure basket play, like a 9-month-old sitting there for like 45 minutes. Just completely immersed. And that's what we want. We want babies we want children to be engaged in play. So when you give them opportunities like this, and if you started at birth, you know, you can't expect to entertain babies and then expect them to become independently involved in play when it suits us. We need to give them opportunities to build that ability to engage in deep, rich play from birth. So, and also treasure baskets, it's like offers a baby to the first opportunity to make choices and decisions, like that first taste of freedom. Promotes the development of concentration, like I said. Again, allows babies to learn many abstract concepts, because you can be starting to develop that language just from us sportscasting or describing the things that they're looking at. And that whole idea of risk taking, like imagine touching, how many of you guys, if you saw some weird object, would just go up and touch it? Like adults, we don't do that, you know, like that's risk taking, but babies do it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and we allow them to become and develop that risk assessing, their risk assessment skills through that idea of treasure baskets. So, you know, it's just about having objects, random objects. And so when you're building your treasure baskets, again, think of your senses. Think through all your senses when you're gathering objects and things like that.
Might just quickly grab mine.
Yeah, go for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, have a look.
I gave a couple away at birthday times to some friends, along with clothes and other things as well. But as soon as one of the children got the little rocks, like I had them big enough that they weren't going to choke on them, as soon as the child got the rock and threw it, the dad of the family was like, yep, no, that's not working. We're taking that away.
Oh, no. It's like, just take it outside. It's so hard, and that's what I think, especially with babies, we as adults that are working with them and as the professionals need to really be able to advocate for children to have those sort of things through sharing the information like this. I know one of the things Nick and I want to do is develop some short, like 10-minute parent information videos. Again, I don't know how I'm going to do it, because I really struggle with talking to a screen when there's no people on the front, but I think that's, you know, advocating and having information that you can share with families to help them understand the importance of all these sort of things. And yeah, so show us, Joanne, what have you got?
All right, show you my little basket of goodies. Don't know if you can see very well, but
Yeah.
there's like, the side of the basket has this raffia on it, which is just, they love just touching and moving and feeling. And this is like, I think this is a candle holder, but it was like this giant wooden ball that looked like kind of like an apple that I found in the op shop.
Love it.
Yeah.
Is anyone else like peeking up like this because they think it's going to let them see more of the...
Oh, sorry. Is that helping? Is that better?
No, that's me doing it, but it's like, it's not going to help me.
This random metal pair. And then
Awesome.
it's like a soft brush
Oh, yeah.
with a wooden base and handle. Then there's a silk.
Yep. And napkin rings and bangles are the best ever.
Yeah, these are just wooden cardboard rolls.
Yep.
Left over from, I think, masking tape or sticky tape or something. And then there's wooden curtain rings.
Mm-hmm.
I love these.
Yep.
And just, well, I actually found a plastic crocodile in there before, but that one of my 4-year-olds popped in there the other day. Then little wooden horse and just...
This is where op shops come in.
I love op shops.
You know?
This is just a wooden peg.
Oh, with a rubber band on it. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, just that's all my little bits and pieces, but it changes all the time because, I mean, they dump it out and move things around and, you know, take a liking to one thing and take it somewhere else and post that into another thing and forever finding things in the most bizarre spaces.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Joanne. That's
Okay.
awesome. But op shops, yeah, definitely bangles, and yeah, there's so much great stuff that you can find there. So tell me some of the things that babies and toddlers do over and over. Posting was one of them. Who said that before? Yep.
Yeah.
Well, from my experience, a lot of them seem to do, they like to grab one item, and sometimes I think, how on earth are they gripping that big square block? It's very light and sort of like rubbery, and they will do everything with one hand but hang on to this one item the entire time. They'll just drag it everywhere and not let go, and they're just holding it with their little fingers. How on earth they get that grip, I have no idea. There's like a little ridge around the block, and or, you know, they'll get another block and they'll just hang on to that one block and then just do all their other little explorations, but just hang on to that one item.
Yep. There's a lot going on there, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Dropping things, picking up and dropping things.
Tipping things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, tipping things in and out all the time. They can just do that all day. They never get bored with that.
Yeah. Julie, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I have a little one that we have a set of stacking cups, and every morning she comes in, it's the first thing she goes to. She'll go to the stacking cups, build it up, knock it down, build it up, and she'll leave it. She may come back to it, you know, throughout the day, but it's the first thing she always goes to.
Yeah, there's a combination of things there. I think that ritual thing that's so important for children. Rituals are so, and routines for children, but I think also then a bit of schema as well. Yeah. So that those repeated behaviours, and they're usually the things that drive us absolutely crazy. They can be great, but they can also be like really annoying. But they're the repeated patterns of behaviour. And remember when we go back to that the synapses of the brain, the more often we do something, the stronger that synapses becomes, and that's a natural instinct for children. So, and the schemas are children's natural actions and investigative behaviour, and it's not random. There's a pattern. Also, I think we actually might have a webinar that we've got for this, but I can also do a bit more in depth. We're just going to touch on schemas now, but there's something.
Amazing.
Yeah, yep. So understanding schemas, it's useful for helping to understand a child's motivation. And for me, that's what our whole job is really, is to find out what a child's motivation is for doing something, and then allow them and then set up and support them to be able to do that as much as possible. Really, for me, when I simplify our job as an educator, it's to find out what they're intrinsically motivated to do and give them as much opportunity as possible to explore it in as many ways as they can. So schemas are just, when you understand schemas, it helps you to understand infant, toddler, and then you know what to provide so they can do it as much as they want. So here's just some of the main ones. So trajectory, there's actually there's a variety of trajectories. When there's something like 49 officially observed schemas that you can actually look at. So some of them, like trajectory, will go into horizontal, vertical, but just for tonight we're just going to look at these ones. So we've got trajectory, which is just it's lines of movement really. And when children are exploring a schema, they tend to do it with not just the objects in their space, but also with themselves as a object, you know. So trajectory can be a child that throws stuff everywhere and throws sand and whatever, but they're also probably throwing themselves off the lounge, throwing themselves through the air. Like there's a lot of people focus on what the child is doing with the object, but you need to see what they're going to do with their body as well. Rotation is all about spinning and turning and rolling, that sort of thing. Enclosing is so people get enclosing and enveloping confused. Enclosing is when we create a boundary around something. So you know when children build blocks like a fence around something that they might be doing, or they might make like a fence line or sort of a boundary. Enveloping is when you can't see it anymore. So it's, you know, when we think we've got little kleptomaniacs in our, we pat them down before they leave every day because they're determined to take stuff home, which I have a bit of a theory about that, but we won't talk about that tonight. But enveloping is that idea of putting something away. Is it going to be there? And one of the most amazing ones that I see, I remember when I finally realised that's what was happening, is when a child paints their skin. And it's a form of enveloping because you can see it, but then you can't see it. You know, putting your hand into muddy water, you can see it, but then it's gone, but then it's the back and then it's gone. So it's really interesting. Transporting is just moving stuff from one spot to another. And that's, I think, most parents will say that's one of the most irritating. You know, they set up their rooms all beautifully and all designer-ish, and then all of a sudden they've just moved everything from one side of the room to the other. Connecting, so that's just joining stuff together. So it can be why sticky tape is so exciting for children, but it also can just be putting things together. And I think also one of the reasons that magnets are so enticing and magical to children is that whole connection stuff. Positioning is what, you know, when children start to really be thoughtful about where they place things, you see a lot in block play with depending on what accessories and stuff you have, but you'll also see it with so Mary, when you talked about that block, you know, that a child was just holding on to the whole time. It can be that they're just transporting it, waiting to see where they're going to transport it to, but it also can be, where does this belong? Like, where do I want to put it eventually? I still remember at a consult, I saw this little girl. She was just toddling, so she's about 10 months old, maybe 11, and she had a handful of rocks, and she spent like 50 minutes walking around the playground, putting a rock down, picking it back up, putting it back, and like holding it, and then she put one down, look at it, and then leave it. And then about 40 minutes it took for her to put these rocks around the playground. No one else had noticed, and I think she was on to me. I was trying to be really inconspicuous about watching her because she didn't like it, so I was trying to pretend I wasn't watching, but trying to watch. And I still remember she put down that last rock, it was right in the doorway, and she put it down. She had that sense of like, oh yeah, you could just see the pride, like, I've just put these things in position. And she's walked off, and one of the educators walked past, saw the rock in the walkway, picked it up and tossed it into the garden. And I was like, oh gosh, I hope she doesn't see that. Like, you could just, but that sense of positioning, like it's an intentional placement of an object. So hang on, sorry, I've just got a minute. Yeah, so, and then orientation. So orientation is all about a viewpoint. It's all about what can I see from this perspective. And I don't know about you guys, but I still remember so many times just sitting upside, like laying upside down on my lounge with my legs over the back. And you see so many children that want to climb up high and they want to see something, or they want to go down below and they want to see something. So it's about having a different viewpoint of the world around them. So it can be upside down, it can be high, it can be low, it can be from inside to outside, outside to inside, if that makes sense. So what we want to be thinking about when we're setting up our environments, if we notice these sort of patterns of behaviour happening, thinking about ways that we can support them in different ways. So if it was, for example, transporting, we would have lots of loose parts or loose items and lots of things to transport in. So you'd have bags and baskets and trolleys or whatever, stuff that they can.
Doing big dump trucks full of giant rocks at the moment. They'll take those and they'll drag them from one end of the yard to the other, then take them on their own obstacle course with all these rocks. And
and another thing is a pram. You know the little baby prams that we put in our spaces, and then we tell them not to put their friends in them. Like, I've never understood that. I've just like either put a pram or just understand they're going to try and jam their mates into it and move them somewhere, or they're going to fill them up with stuff and move them somewhere. But baby pram should not be allowed unless you know that you're going to allow those children to use it in a way that's meaningful for them.
I think they need to design them to be stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always have lots of, paper bags with handles, and I hang them up on the little doorknobs of the drawers that I have in there. And they just love it. We take them outside, we have them inside, and they'll just spend hours and hours putting stuff in and out of these paper bags. They just love it.
Oh,
like
it is. Yeah.
Putting stuff in, taking it out. It's just, I just love watching them, do that transportation type thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, I'll send the notes for those ones. There's also that webinar that I was talking about, which is really good. So really, when you're looking at your environments, it's about getting to the position of that child. So these two photos are taken from an infant's perspective, like they're down low from that viewpoint. Lay in that space and close your eyes and see what you can smell and what you can hear. Have a look at what you can see around and what really utilize your senses as a lens to set up your environment, because that is what babies are exploring the world with. It's completely sensorial. They're not thinking abstract. They're connecting in a relationship, and they're exploring with their senses, and that's just the two things that we really have to focus on. So is there anything at the moment you don't like or that you feel is challenging? No.
I've got about a 20-month-old who likes to have my attention and not have any other child have my attention. So if one child sits on my lap, the 20-month-old will scream, or if my own son comes up and has a cuddle or touches me and wants my attention, the 20-month-old will scream. And then I'll just look at them and it's like they know that they're just seeking that attention. They're just making sure that I'm still connecting with them.
Yep. And that's so challenging. And I think I mean, you need to, especially for a 20-month-old, like they're coming up to that 2-year-old where they're starting to think abstractly. It's not so much that full, but it's also it's expressing power and control over their situation and their life and things as well. And I think, imagine how hard it is for a 2-year-old that's coming into that idea of now I want to find myself and challenge boundaries, but they're still so limited with their actually ability to control much in their life at all. And I think, I know some people can be caught up in like, oh, they've just got to learn, but I think if you can give that to them, and as long as it's not other children's sense of well-being aren't being compromised as well, and that's particularly your son too, because it's important for him to know that he's, you know, you're not going to give other children a high sense of well-being for your son, because it's, you know, it's got to be that balance.
Yeah.
But I think especially when they're older children, is talking to them and just saying, this baby at the moment doesn't understand, they don't understand that I can't be just for them all the time. And even just putting your hand on their chest, you know, if they're upset and whatever, and just putting your hand on their chest while you're dealing or managing or cuddling someone else, you're still there for them. Because part of Penny's course, again, which was amazing, is how much energy comes through from our hand and putting it on your heart, on the heart of that child, or holding their hands. Like what comes through our hands is amazing, you know, holding their hands and talking to them and making eye contact, and still making them know that you're listening and you're hearing them. You might not be able to pick them up right now because someone else might need you more, but I'm still here.
Often I'll have them, the 20-month-old sitting on my lap, and then someone else will come over and sit on my other leg, and then it's all on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, like I do a lot of personality type training stuff around children, and it sounds like you might have a choleric baby on your hands. So if you want to email me, I can give you some little bit of information about how you might be able to support them and yourself. But especially at this age, it's just not, it's so, the baby up until the age of 2 to 3, they're so impulsive, you know. There's not a lot of cognitive, as in this is what I'm trying to do to get what I want. It's very instinctive. That's what I mean to say. It's very instinctive behavior and instinctive actions and instinctive reactions, not so much I'm going to do this so I can get that. There's not that level of development in the brain yet. So but it's also habitual. They're very habitual creatures as well. Yeah. Anyone else have any challenges?
Challenge at the moment, which is the 1-year-old who it's more just, he's a bulldozer. He's an absolute bulldozer. Love it. The 4-year-old, not so much when they're trying to build a tower, and he just wants to be there doing what they're doing. And just with him touching and interacting with what they're doing, quite often will destroy something precious that they've spent a lot of time, you know, creating. So I suppose finding spaces within my environment that work for that mixed age group, but still give, you know, the older children a chance to do the activity that they want to do, but provide something equally as engaging that's near, but not, you know, not destroying what they're building or doing.
Oh, it's so tricky. And again, that choleric child that I was talking to you about, they always want to be bigger. They want to be the big boy. They want to be the big kid. They want to be, I mean, my Oscar, my youngest, that you saw the photos of, he's the strongest choleric child I think I've ever come across in my life. And as soon as he could talk, all he wanted to be was dad, because in his head, dad was the boss. You know, and it's because they want to be the big, you know, they're the children that love to do the real jobs and the big jobs and the, but it's
again? I'll write that.
The choleric, okay, CHOLERIC. We've got 2 books on our website. One's called Personality Plus and one's Personality Plus for Parents. Both of those are brilliant books. But it will help you understand because we're actually born with a personality type. We learn how to manage it through life in different situations. But basically, yeah, it's but when you're a young child, you're very raw, you're very instinctive. So you're going to be instinctive you haven't learned how to manage yourself socially appropriately yet. So cholerics are the hardest ones to deal with.
Good.
But they're also amazing. They're going to make the most amazing leaders later on in life too. So we've got to be able to hone it in a way that, not even hone it, but hold space for them until they're emotionally intelligent enough to manage themselves.
I suppose helping other children while they're in that environment, supporting everyone.
Yeah, and giving them, and knowing that they're going to have time and space, you know, when putting stuff up on a table so it's out of reach of that child maybe, or in a different part of your house where they can, or it's just, that's definitely a case by case sort of situation. Yeah. So basically we're looking at, we want to avoid overstimulation. So when we're looking at the highly sensorial people, you only want the stuff that you want to be stimulating to be evident. You know, you want natural elements. We want the right things to be stimulating, not the wrong things, especially like light, and over too many toys can just cause havoc if there's too many options. Like I said before, getting down to baby height, making sure that this comes back to personality types of, again, introvert and extrovert. You want some cozy hiding spaces. Introverts get drained by being around other people all the time. So they need to, once they're feeling that their energy's been exhausted a bit, they need to be able to duck off and feel that there's somewhere just to be by themselves. Just like that extrovert's going to be seeking out every person so that they can talk their ear off, the introvert child needs to be able to find a space, and not just one. You know, I find a lot of, especially in bigger services, for you guys it's a bit easier, but in big services, they might have like one little cozy tent or one hidey spot in the indoor space. You know, chances are half your children are introverts. You need multiple spaces for children to just go and be on their own. That's really important. Otherwise, they just get cranky. That's what happens. So again, using your knowledge of child development to provide the appropriate environments. And thinking of all those senses. Okay, so I think did I go over a little bit? Yes, I did. Any questions about tonight?
No. It's been really good.
Awesome. It's great to see you all.
No, thank you.
Well, there's my email address. If there's anything in particular from tonight that wasn't on the slides, any side notes that we talked about, email me about.